Hi, I'm Michele McKnight Baker. I'm the author of Soldier's Heart, and I'd like to read from the first chapter of Soldier's Heart, titled Junior. It's April 9, 1865, near the end of the Civil War in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. My name is Junior Thompson. I'm 12 years old today. My pap's called Chance, and my man's name is Sarai. I'm telling you this story because it's your story too. Outside the church, after it all happened, his man told him to hush and whispered, "Forget this. You're too young to understand." Junior thought, she means she doesn't want me to. But I know what I've seen. He walked to a church a few steps behind his parents, Chance and Sarai Thompson. It was past winter, on the warm edge of spring. Theirs was the biggest church in Carlisle, all rough and gray on the outside, all light and shadows on the inside. Junior's mam and pap paid for their pew seats. Others with brown skin sat high in the gallery when they could find a seat. Once Junior asked Pap why they were the only colored family paying for their own pew. "Sometimes it's necessary to be the only one," he said, in a way Junior knew meant he would get the same answer if he ever asked again. Things were not as proper here as they seem, Junior thought. Secrets and stuff. Like the name of our town, it's got an S inside, but you're not supposed to say it. The Thompsons sat in their back row box pew, as usual, right behind Junior's school teacher, Teacher Broombach, and her daughter, Abigail. Junior looked at them, but turned his head quick when Abigail looked his way. "Widow Broombach, that's what grown-ups call our teacher. Nobody sits next to them because they're German, and Abigail's mam's never really been married. That's why at school we call her just plain Teacher Broombach." Junior covered a sly grin with his hand, remembering one time when his foot had gotten stuck out in the aisle and Preacher Wing flew, almost fell on his face. Teacher Broombach, leaning in the aisle, broke his fall with her ample bosom, and when Preacher came up for air, he looked straight at Junior and did not look unhappy. There was the usual boot scraping against bare brick and floorboards, and clicking of watch fobs and rustling of petticoats while people got settled in, still smelling winter damp and musty. Junior could hear the coal fire hissing, and by the time the church filled up, he did not feel the wet cold anymore. Preacher Wing talked at the people for a while from the deep and the wide and the "Oh, Holy Ghost." "Mend the deep wounds in our churches," he prayed, "and would our Father please heal and strengthen the reunion of our states." He told what everyone else already knew, that Richmond fell, and how General Lee's army was surrounded, and how our guest speaker went from captain to brigadier general during the rebellion on account of his heroic actions, and how he still served the Republic in Pennsylvania as provost marshal. Then Preacher came down from that little mountain of a pulpit and shook the hand of General Henderson, the man in the sharp blue uniform sitting with his family in a pew up front and on the other side of the aisle from the Thompsons. Junior fastened his eyes on the Henderson family. He felt squirmy with anticipation, his heart full up proud. Beside Mrs. Henderson sat their son, Junior's best friend, Webb, and his baby sister, Lizzie. General Henderson's father, with his big lion's head of white hair, people called the old colonel because he fought in the War of 1812. That old man's eyes stuck to his son, General Henderson, like he would never look at anything else. Preacher sat down on the pew in front, and General Henderson climbed up to that pulpit like he was mounting his war horse. Junior liked hearing his friend's pap speak. General Henderson had one of those voices that hooked you and took you along with him. He took his listeners to the battlefield along with the grand army of the Republic. Junior saw his own pap and other veterans nodding their heads, remembering. In his heart, Junior became a Union soldier too, marching where General Henderson marched, fighting where General Henderson fought, bravely fighting to win the War of the Rebellion. Everybody was listening so hard, nobody but Junior heard the click of the door latch that sounded like a rifle cocking. Then Junior saw a soldier in a rebel gray coat with brass buttons and thought, "Oh, there will be trouble." The soldier wore a sidearm and carried a stick Junior had seen before. "I gave that stick to him." The man walked down the aisle slow and quiet and wide in the leg, like a gunslinger biding his time. Abigail Broombach squirmed around, stuck out her finger at the man in gray, and whispered, "Is that Webb's uncle, the general's brother?" "Webb's Uncle Nathan," Junior nodded his head. "They do look like copies of each other sure enough, especially how they hold themselves, straight and strong, like oaks that refuse to bend in the wind." At the front of the sanctuary, the soldier stopped and held the stick up until it was pointing straight at the general, who stopped talking. People started rustling in their seats, uncomfortable at this odd way of saluting. "That ain't no salute." Junior knew what it was. General Henderson looked hard at his brother, waiting for him to sit down. Junior got up real quiet and stood in the aisle so he could see all of what was happening. Webb's Uncle Nathan turned suddenly and looked straight at old Colonel sitting off by himself in the corner up front. "Look at me, Father," said the son. Old Colonel just kept looking straight at General Henderson, his other son. Everything was oh so quiet. Junior could hear the brother in gray breathing sharp, like he was hurting from an injury. "Look at me, Father, I'm your son too." Old Colonel just sat there, stern as stone. At first Junior thought that Nathan Henderson started laughing, but he turned fast to see the whole church, and he was crying hard, eyes screwed shut, mess coming from his nose. He dropped his stick, his hands at his waist, fiddling with the buttons. Then he started to lift his hands like he was asking for help, but his hands went to his pants again, and he shoved the pants down. What Junior saw looked like a map with angry red scars instead of roads, running up and across that man's lower body. "I never seen a naked white man till now, but I seen scars before." Junior felt sick when he saw what was missing. No male parts like I have between my legs, naught but a rough-looking bump and nub. That map of skin seamed and stretched tight. Men's voices started to rumble while ladies whimpered. Mrs. Henderson stood up in front of the man in gray, turned her head away and spreading her skirt a bit wider so that nobody could see that awful map. The man in gray sighed like he was letting go of something. General Henderson started stomping down those curved steps from the pulpit when all of a sudden the soldier grabbed his pistol from his holster and lifted it up in the air. People's voices rose, and Junior heard how the ocean must sound right before a gathering wave crashes down on some helpless ship.